Chapter 8, The War for Independence. Lesson 1, Declaring Independence. Top of page 262. Build on what you know. You may have a birth certificate at home. This paper tells when you were born. In a way, our country has a birth certificate. It's called the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration marks the beginning of the United States. The steps to independence. Main ideas, common sense, and debates in Congress changed people's minds about being ruled by Britain. After the battles of 1775, the American colonies and Britain were at war. However, not all colonists felt this was right. Many still thought of King George III as their ruler. They did not want a war with Britain. Other colonists were patriots. They wanted independence. Independence means freedom from being ruled by someone else. Some patriots felt that independence was worth fighting for. Patrick Henry, a patriot from Virginia, said in a thrilling speech to a group of Virginia delegates, "Give me liberty or give me death." Another patriot, Thomas Paine, used the written word to argue for independence. And you see a picture of Patrick Henry at the bottom. It says these bold, persuasive speeches by Patrick Henry moved colonists toward independence. And when you go to the top of page 263, you see a picture of Thomas Paine. That was his pamphlet, Common Sense. Notice that it's not a book, it's a pamphlet. Okay, Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense in January of 1776. Common Sense pushed for independence. The pamphlet was brief, inexpensive, and easy to understand. Paine wrote that King George treated the colonies unfairly. He claimed that the only way to stop this was to become independent from Britain. Colonists bought over 100,000 copies of Common Sense within a few months. George Washington said, "I find Common Sense is working a powerful change in the minds of many." Thomas Paine put into writing what many of the boldest patriots were already saying. He wrote that colonists had nothing to gain and much to lose by staying tied to an unjust king. Debate in Congress. Delegates to the Second Continental Congress had read Common Sense. Many agreed that independence from Britain was necessary, but they also knew it was risky. Britain was a powerful country. King George III was already gathering soldiers to attack the colonies. Could the colonies stand up to Britain? Some delegates also worried that not enough colonies wanted independence. However, support for independence was growing all across the colonies. John Adams argued strongly for independence. More and more the delegates agreed with his point of view. At last, on June 7, 1776, a Virginia delegate named Richard Henry Lee asked Congress to officially declare independence. Okay, turn the page, go to page 264. This is the Declaration of Independence, and notice you've got Thomas Jefferson up at the top since he's the one who wrote it. He finished his draft. 4 other delegates helped edit it. Those are Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Jefferson, who is standing. Declaration of Independence. The main idea. The Declaration of Independence explains why the colonies should be free. Congress asked Thomas Jefferson and 4 others to write a Declaration of Independence. A declaration is a statement that declares or announces an idea. Congress needed a document to declare why the colonies had to become independent of Britain. In the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson wrote what many Americans believed about their rights. Rights are freedoms that are protected by a government's laws. Jefferson argued that all people are born with rights that no one can take away. He wrote that people have the right to live, the right to be free, and the right to seek happiness. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's right on the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson argued that a government should protect these rights. If it does not, then the people have the right to start a new government. The ideas in the Declaration were not new. Jefferson used ideas that John Locke and other English thinkers had written about. Locke had said that governments should serve the people. Jefferson listed many ways that Britain did not serve the colonists. For instance, King George had tried to take away rights. He had forced taxes on the colonists and sent soldiers to control them. Jefferson showed that the colonists had many reasons to separate from the king. They had the right to create their own government. And at the bottom you have Mary Catherine Goddard. It says, Congress hired Mary Catherine Goddard, a printer, to print an official copy of the Declaration. Parts of the Declaration. You can read the full text of the Declaration on pages R8 to R10 of this book. The Declaration begins by promising to explain why the colonies must break away from Britain. That's number 1 at the top. The next section explains that people have rights that cannot be taken away. It says that all men are created equal. That's down underneath with number 2. The longest section is a list of complaints against the king, which is number 3, which is most of the document. The last section argues that the colonies have to be free to protect the colonists' rights. It declares that the colonies are independent. At the bottom of the document, delegates to Congress sign their names. That's way down at the bottom. And we have John Hancock, which is the president of the Congress, signed his names in large letters. That was so that the king could see it without his spectacles on. Okay, page 266. This is the importance of the Declaration. You're going to see the signers of the Declaration up at the top. You've got Thomas Jefferson presents the document to John Hancock and the Continental Congress. John Adams and Ben Franklin are also there. Importance of the Declaration. Main idea. The Declaration sets forth basic ideas of freedom and equality. On July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress voted to accept the Declaration. The delegates knew that signing the Declaration was dangerous. Britain would call it treason. Treason is the crime of fighting against one's own government. Anyone who signed the Declaration could be charged with treason and hanged. Yet delegates signed. The Declaration was read aloud to excited crowds across the new nation. People tore down pictures and statues of King George. They celebrated by ringing bells and firing cannons. The Declaration of Independence marked the moment when Americans chose to rule themselves. Equality then and now at the top on 266. The Declaration is important today because it states that the people of the United States believe in equal rights for all. Today we know that Jefferson's words, all men are created equal, include everyone, women as well as men, every race, every group, every ability. Is that what the words meant when the Declaration was written? Probably not. In 1776, all Americans could not exercise the same rights. Only white men who owned property could actually vote. Many believed this was unfair. Abigail Adams wanted Congress to recognize the equal rights of women. She wrote to her husband, John Adams, "In the new code of laws, remember the ladies." It took many years, but women, African Americans, American Indians, and other groups have gained equal rights. In later lessons, you read about important laws that guarantee these rights. The Declaration has inspired people, past and present, to work for liberty and equal rights. Go to the lesson summary. The colonies decided to declare their independence from Britain. Congress asked Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration states that everyone has certain rights that no government can take away. Why it matters? The ideas in the Declaration of Independence have meaning today. The rights of freedom and equality that Jefferson wrote about are important American values and principles. That's the end of Lesson 1. Thomas Jefferson, page 268. 1743 to 1826 was when he was born and when he died. Thomas Jefferson is deep in thought. He must find the right words. Congress has chosen Jefferson to tell the king why the American colonies no longer belong to Britain. These are dangerous words, and they could cost Jefferson his life. Yet he loves his country and is writing the words that will create a new nation. He dips his quill pen into the inkwell and rewrites a sentence in his draft. At this amazing moment in his life, he applies to his writing what he has learned and what he cares so much about. All his life, Jefferson wanted to know the why and how of everything. He played the violin, studied the stars, invented things, and designed buildings. He had read about government, history, and science as a young man. In his draft of the Declaration, he used ideas he had learned. The result was one of the most important documents in history, the Declaration of Independence. Notice where his major achievements are. Monticello, that's where he actually lived. That was in 1768. He actually writes the Declaration of Independence in 1776 while the Revolutionary War is going on. He doesn't become president until 1800 because you have to have George Washington first, then John Adams, and then him. In 1803, he actually doubles the size of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase, which was about 3 cents an acre, and he doubled the size. So he had bought it from Napoleon from France. This is in 1804. He sends Lewis and Clark to actually explore the West. And at the top, you have the very first draft of the Declaration of Independence, and actually where he wrote it. And you can actually see that in the National Archives. Lesson 2, Life During the War. Build on what you know. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision? During the American Revolution, people had to make the hard decision whether to fight against Britain. How would a war affect their day-to-day lives? Taking sides. Main idea is Americans made difficult choices about whether to support Britain or the United States, or not to take sides at all. On July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress declared independence. Not all Americans agreed that this was the right thing to do. Many felt that Britain should rule the colonies. Others believed that America should be independent. As the Revolutionary War began, people had to decide whether to support Britain, America, or neither side. Almost half of all Americans were patriots. Remember that a patriot was someone who wanted independence for the colonies. About 1/5 of Americans were loyalists. A loyalist was someone who was still loyal to the king. Many loyalists disagreed with how King George III governed the colonies, but they still wanted America to be part of Britain. The rest of the Americans were neutral. To be neutral means not to take sides at all. Loyalists in America. Loyalists had different reasons for supporting Britain. Most Americans who worked for the British government were loyalists because they would lose their jobs if the Patriots won the war. Many wealthy merchants feared that war would hurt their businesses, so they supported Britain. Other loyalists simply believed that the British cause was right. Some enslaved African Americans became loyalists. They were offered freedom if they helped the British. A few fought in the British Army. Others built forts or drove carts. More American Indians agreed to help the British than to help the Patriots. The Cherokee hoped that the British would win the war and stop settlers from taking land. Mohawk leader Joseph Brant also urged his people to side with the British. Most American Indians stayed neutral during the war. 2 Iroquois nations, the Oneida and the Tuscarora, fought for the Patriots. Then you have the Patriots over on the right on page 271. Patriots found many ways to support the cause of independence. Some joined the Continental Army and fought the British. Patriots who did not fight gave support in other ways. Chaim Salomon, a banker from Philadelphia, helped the United States get loans. He also lent his own money. Many African Americans were patriots. Some enslaved African Americans were offered freedom if they became patriot soldiers. Peter Salem, a patriot hero of the Battle of Bunker Hill, was one of them. Free African Americans also became soldiers. About 5,000 African Americans fought in the Continental Army, and another 2,500 served in the Navy. Turn to page 272. Women in the War. Some women patriots worked as spies and messengers. A few women, such as Deborah Sampson, dressed in men's clothes and joined the Continental Army. Others spread the message of freedom in letters, plays, and poems. African American poet Phillis Wheatley wrote a poem for George Washington praising him and the cause of freedom. Many women, including General Washington's wife, followed their husbands who were in the Army. Each winter during the 8 years of the war, Martha Washington stayed at the general's camp. She did all she could to help the soldiers. Some women cooked at camp or brought water to soldiers on the battlefields. They were nicknamed Molly Pitcher because of the pitchers of water they carried. A few of these women fought when their husbands were hurt or killed. One Molly Pitcher, Mary Ludwig Hayes, was honored by General Washington for fighting in her husband's place after he was injured. Another famous patriot was Nancy Morgan Hart of Georgia. She once had to defend her home against a group of loyalist fighters. The Challenges of War, page 273. The War for Independence created many problems for Americans. When the British and the American armies met in battle, people who lived nearby had to leave their homes. Both armies destroyed houses and robbed farms. Everyone was affected, whether a patriot, a loyalist, or neutral. During the war, the prices of food, clothing, and supplies increased. Inflation caused hardship in the colonies. A rise in the price of goods is called inflation. Higher prices made it difficult for people to buy the goods they needed. Some merchants and farmers would not sell their goods. They waited for prices to go even higher so that they could sell their goods for more money. Holding back goods lowered supplies of necessary items, which hurt people, and made it difficult to feed and supply the army. Congress made it illegal to hold on to goods. Life was hard because of the problems caused by war, but many Americans still wanted independence. Go to the lesson summary. Americans were divided about which side to support during the American Revolution. Patriots found many ways to support the cause of independence. Whatever their choice, for most Americans, the war brought many hardships. Why does it matter? Patriots believed strongly in their cause. They were determined not to give up the fight against British rule. And they actually made it because they won the Revolutionary War. So that is at the bottom of 273. You may stop now.